bossy, baby. I'm fucking with them, man. I fuck with some bosses, baby. She don't want no puppy. She want a big dog. Wash my clothes the other day. Get out the way. Get out the way. Get out the way. Get out the way.
At 4:35 a.m. on Sunday, March 30th, 2025, the Alexandria Police Department received a call reporting a domestic disturbance with shots fired at a home on Ron Marr Drive, inside the Bocage subdivision just off Twin Bridges Road. Inside the home, police made a chilling discovery. 38-year-old Shaterrica Smith, a mother of two, lay dead from a gunshot wound. Nearby was her husband, 42-year-old Tracy Johnson, who appeared to have turned the weapon on himself. The scene left investigators with a grim conclusion. A heated argument between husband and wife had spiraled beyond repair. A marriage that looked picture-perfect to the outside world had ended in murder-suicide. But how does a love story that once inspired envy among friends and strangers unravel into violence behind closed doors? This is the story of life and death of Shaterrica Smith. Alexandria, Louisiana, sits in the heart of central Louisiana, along the Red River. With just under 45,000 residents, it feels like a close-knit community, a hub for work, school, and healthcare in the region. But behind its small city charm lies a harsher truth. The crime rate is higher than the national average, with residents facing a 1 in 17 chance of being a victim of crime and a 1 in 109 chance of violent crime. Welcome to True Crime Red Flag. Thank you to my amazing subscribers. May your family stay safe wherever you are. If you're new here, subscribe and like this video because we reveal the warning signs that so many people ignore until it's too late. To understand how this happened, we need to step back because the story of that morning begins long before the gunshots. Shaterrica Smith was born and raised in Alexandria, Louisiana, where she attended Peabody Magnet High School. Friends and family described her as vibrant, outgoing, and full of life. She loved music, dancing, and fashion, often showcasing her style and energy on social media, where her personality shone through every post. At 38 years old, she was a devoted mother of 2 children who remained at the center of her world. Those close to her said she balanced the responsibilities of motherhood with her natural love for fun, attending parties, traveling with friends, and seizing every opportunity to celebrate life. Shaterrica had a gift for drawing people in. She was known as someone who could light up a room, quick to laugh and quick to make others feel included. Her videos often captured that spirit: bold outfits, infectious laughter, and a confidence that seemed unshakable. When she met Tracy Johnson, she celebrated him openly. She frequently posted videos and photos of them together, presenting their love as something enviable, something solid. To many who followed her online, she looked like a woman who had found both joy and stability. Their relationship unfolded on screens like a love story written for an audience. Clips captured them moving together in living rooms, dancing as if music was the only language they needed. At dinner tables, laughter flowed easily between them, inside jokes turning into wide smiles that friends and followers could feel even through the screen. During playful challenges, they teased each other with the comfort of 2 people who knew every quirk and rhythm of the other's personality. Travel clips showed them side by side in new places, sharing meals, exploring, singing along to songs in the car, always giving the impression of a couple who enjoyed life most when they were together. By early 2025, changes in her posts became impossible to miss. Tracy, once a constant presence in her photos and videos, was no longer there. In his absence, new images appeared one after another. Shaterrica was seen on girls' trips, standing with friends at airports, checking into hotels, and posing in group photos from different cities. She shared videos from parties, dancing with her circle, raising glasses, and singing along to music late into the night. Her uploads also included sexy pictures of herself, mirror selfies in fitted dresses, snapshots in heels and styled hair, clips of her outfits before heading out. These were shared often, and they stood in sharp contrast to the couple-centered content she had once posted with Tracy. Alongside the photos came short, cryptic posts about men and relationships. The words were brief and never specific, but they hinted at disappointment and frustration. Combined with the constant trips, the steady party footage, and the bold pictures, her page showed a clear shift. The focus was now on her life outside the marriage, not the relationship that had once been the center of her feed. This change in online presence is more than digital noise. In domestic violence cases, social media often reveals the first visible cracks. What looks like freedom to the world can feel like rejection to a controlling partner. And control, once threatened, is where jealousy, rage, and violence so often take root. On March 30th, 2025, during the early morning hours, an argument between Shaterrica Smith and her husband Tracy Johnson spiraled out of control. In the heat of that confrontation, Tracy pulled a gun and shot Shaterrica, killing her instantly. Moments later, he turned the weapon on himself and ended his own life. Both children were inside the home when the violence unfolded, and in the span of minutes, they lost not just their parents, but the sense of safety and stability that anchors a child's world, leaving their future permanently altered. When officers entered the home, they found no signs of forced entry. The doors and windows were intact, and nothing suggested that an intruder had been involved. Inside, investigators recovered shell casings and bullets that were consistent with the handgun found at the scene. The placement of the evidence pointed to a single weapon being used in the shooting. With both victims inside the home and no indication of outside involvement, police concluded that the violence began and ended within the household. The physical evidence supported their determination that Tracy Johnson had shot his wife, Shaterrica Smith, before turning the gun on himself. The case was ruled an apparent murder-suicide. Investigators reviewed the background of Tracy Johnson and found no record of criminal activity. There were no arrests, no open warrants, and no history with law enforcement. Within the household, police had never been called to the address, no reports of domestic violence had been filed, and neighbors could not recall a single instance of officers responding to the home. On paper, nothing in his past suggested a pattern of violence or a warning of what would happen on March 30th. Although no official reports of trouble existed, speculation arose after the tragedy about changes that had been visible in the months leading up to March 30th. Friends and followers noticed that Shaterrica, who once filled her social media with photos and videos of her husband, had gradually stopped posting about him. The couple content that once defined her page gave way to solo photos, group outings, and frequent trips with friends. She appeared more often at parties, dressed sexy, and spoke in captions that hinted at disappointment in relationships. To many, the shift suggested cracks in the marriage that had not been acknowledged publicly. What once looked like a shared story had become the image of a woman living independently, separate from the man she had once celebrated so openly. That independence, admired by some as confidence, may have cut differently inside the home. Observers now believe that Tracy saw her distance not as self-expression, but as rejection, a wound to his ego that deepened as her public persona grew apart from him. Her cryptic posts added another layer to the change. Short lines about men, about disappointment, about the strain of relationships appeared without context. At the time, they seemed vague, easy for followers to scroll past or interpret as casual frustration. Only in hindsight did they resemble signals of something darker, signs that her marriage was under pressure. No one realized the weight of those words until it was too late. The story of Shaterrica Smith and Tracy Johnson closes with a tragedy that no one can undo. A marriage once displayed as unshakable ended in a burst of violence behind closed doors. 2 children lost both parents in a single night. A family now carries the grief of losing a daughter while also confronting the truth that her husband was the one who took her life. There were no calls to police, no formal records of domestic conflict, and no history of violence on file. On paper, nothing predicted the outcome. Yet in the months before her death, the signs were present in other ways. The absence of her husband from her posts, the trips, the girls' hangout, the cryptic captions, each piece suggested a relationship straining under the surface. What she presented as independence may have been read by him as rejection. What she posted as fragments of frustration were hints of a deeper fracture no one fully recognized until it was too late. The official file ends with the words murder-suicide, but the aftermath continues in the lives of 2 children. in the grief of relatives now responsible for their care, and in the unanswered questions left hanging over March 30th. What was said in those final minutes? Could someone close have seen the danger sooner? And how many other stories are unfolding quietly behind carefully chosen photos and curated words, waiting for someone to notice the red flags? Shaterrica's death is a reminder that appearances can mask reality, that silence can hide struggle, and that love presented as perfect can collapse without warning. For her children, for her family, and for her community, the weight of this tragedy remains. A life cut short, a story ended in violence, and a warning not to overlook the signs that so often go unseen until they become irreversible. If you found this story important, don't let it end here. Subscribe to True Crime Red Flag, where we uncover the warning signs that many ignore until it's too late. Like this video, share it with others, and help raise awareness, because recognizing red flags can save lives.